The girls began to share their stories in hushed whispers. They spoke of the teacher who had promised them futures, only to manipulate them into dangerous situations. Amina, though still afraid, realized that she was not alone. The truth needed to come out, and the only way to do so was to stand together. They began to form a plan, a quiet rebellion against the man they had once trusted. Amina was no longer alone. She found courage in the solidarity of the other girls, who had suffered in silence for too long. It was in the secrecy of their meetings, held in the dark corners of the village, where they found the strength to speak. They gathered quietly under the cover of night, when the village was asleep, and shared their stories. Each girl had a piece of the puzzle, and together, they could see the full picture. One of the girls, Tandau, a bold and outspoken student, took it upon herself to seek the counsel of Mama Zai, one of the village elders who was known for her wisdom and strength. Mama Zai had always been an advocate for the young girls in the village, and she was known for her unwavering support of education. When Tandau shared what had been happening with Mr. Edward, Mama Zai's face turned pale. "You are not alone," Mama Zai said firmly. "The truth will come out. But we must be careful. We must be patient. The elders must know, but we must prepare them for what they are about to hear." It was then that the girls knew what they had to do. They would gather evidence, speak to those who had witnessed the manipulations, and together they would bring Mr. Edward and Denver to justice. The fight was not just for their dignity, it was for the future of all the girls in Jacarandi, to ensure that no one else would suffer as they had. The whisper of resistance grew louder, and the village began to stir with an undercurrent of change. The village of Jacarandi, once peaceful and unified, had begun to feel the tremors of unrest. Beneath the surface of everyday life, a growing tension was rising. The whispers of Mr. Edwards and Denver's crimes had reached the ears of many, but it was not enough to confront them directly, yet. Amina, with the support of the other girls, continued to collect evidence, though it was difficult. Each of them knew the risks involved. There were those who were still loyal to Mr. Edward, those who believed he had truly come to help, and they would fight to protect him. But the truth was undeniable. The girls' stories, their courage, and the fragments of evidence they had gathered were enough to make the elders question everything they had believed. Mama Zai, the elder who had first spoken out, was becoming increasingly agitated. She had spent her life watching over the village, ensuring its future, and now the very foundation of that future was being torn apart by the betrayal of those they had trusted most. She had a quiet, unyielding strength that commanded respect, and now it was time to use that strength to protect the girls. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, Mama Zai summoned a meeting of the elders. They gathered under the old baobab tree, the air thick with the weight of the moment. Word had spread that the girls were beginning to speak out, and the elders knew they could no longer ignore the problem. As the elders sat in a circle, Mama Zai spoke with a stern but determined voice. "We have lived in this village for many years. We have built it with our hands and our hearts. But if we do not act now, we will lose something far more precious than land or crops, we will lose our future. The children of this village must be protected." The elders, though shocked by the accusations, knew in their hearts that Mama Zai was right. They agreed to take action, but they also knew that confronting Mr. Edward and Denver would be dangerous. It was no longer just a matter of a teacher's misdeeds, it was a matter of a corrupt system that needed to be torn down. Amina, her heart pounding in her chest, stood before the elders as they gathered in the central village square. The villagers had been called to attend, and they stood in silence, their faces drawn with curiosity and fear. Mr. Edward and Denver had been summoned as well, their presence now demanded. Mr. Edward and Denver arrived together, their faces betraying no emotion, though they had begun to feel the weight of the villagers' gaze. The air was thick with tension as they approached the center of the gathering. The moment had arrived, and there was no turning back. Amina stepped forward, her voice trembling but resolute. She spoke of the manipulation, the promises of a better future, and the lies that had been spun around the girls. She detailed the instances when Mr. Edward had made advances toward her and others, preying on their dreams and turning their trust into a weapon. Her words were powerful, not just because they were true, but because they came from the heart of someone who had been betrayed. But as Amina finished, she wasn't the only one to speak. Tandeu Ikesai and others who had suffered in silence followed, recounting their experiences, their voices growing stronger as they shared their painful stories. Each girl's testimony added weight to the evidence that had already been gathered. Mr. Edward tried to defend himself, his voice rising in anger. "You don't understand," he shouted. "I came here to help. I wanted to give them a future." But his words fell flat. The elders were no longer listening. Denver, standing at Mr. Edward's side, finally spoke, but his words only added to the suspicion. "We've been doing what we believed was best," Denver said, his voice low, but it was clear that his defenses were crumbling. The villagers could see the lies in his eyes. At that moment, Mama's eyes stood up. Her eyes were fierce, filled with the wisdom of years, and her voice rang out with authority. "You have betrayed the trust of this community. You have used your position to exploit these girls. You will answer for your actions." The elders, once silent, now spoke in unison, demanding that Mr. Edward and Denver be removed from the village. They would face the law and they would answer for their crimes. The village was rocked by the revelation, but the truth had set the people free. The web of lies that had ensnared the girls and the entire community was finally unraveled, and what had been a whisper of suspicion was now a loud, undeniable roar. With the elders' authority behind them, the girls gathered the final pieces of evidence, the financial records, the letters that had been exchanged, and testimonies from those who had witnessed the inappropriate behavior. Mr. Edward and Denver could no longer deny the weight of the truth. The two men were forced to leave the village in disgrace, chased by a group of angry villagers carrying torches and forks. They tried to protest, to claim that they had only meant to help, but their words were drowned out by the condemnation of the people. They were no longer welcome in Jacarandi, their reputation shattered and were never seen again. The villagers, however, did not rejoice in their defeat. Instead, they turned inward, grappling with the betrayal that had come so close to destroying their community. They had trusted these men, and their trust had been abused. But through it all, the villagers found strength in one another. The girls who had suffered were no longer alone. The community rallied around them, offering support and love. The village elders worked together to ensure that such a betrayal would never happen again, strengthening the systems that protected the young girls and ensuring that education remained a tool of empowerment, not exploitation. In the weeks that followed, the village began to heal, but the scars of betrayal remained. Amina and the other girls who had been affected began to find peace, though it would take time. Some girls were sent to nearby towns to continue their education, away from the shadows of the past. Others remained in Jacarandi, determined to rebuild their lives, stronger and wiser than before. But the journey to healing was not without its challenges. The whispers of the betrayal spread beyond the village, and many people who had once trusted Mr. Edward and Denver now struggled to understand how they could have missed the signs. Some questioned their own roles in the failure to protect the girls, while others wrestled with guilt for not speaking up sooner. The community had paid a heavy price for the deception. Trust, once broken, was not easily restored. But the village was determined to move forward. The lessons learned from this dark chapter would not be forgotten. The girls who had stood together were now seen as heroes, young women who had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Their bravery had saved not just their own futures, but the futures of countless other girls in Jacarandi. In the aftermath of the betrayal, Jacarandi was a different place. It had been wounded, yes, but it had also been made stronger by the pain it had endured. The village came together, united by the need to protect its future, especially its children. The strength of the community lay not in the absence of betrayal, but in how it responded when that betrayal was exposed. Amina, now a young woman, stood before the villagers at the annual harvest festival, her voice strong and clear. She had become a leader in her own right, a symbol of the resilience and strength of the girls who had fought for justice. She spoke of the importance of education, of self-respect, and of the power that came from standing together against those who would try to exploit or silence them. The future is in our hands, Amina said, looking out at the faces of the villagers. And we will not let anyone take that away from us. The village elders, too, had learned a valuable lesson. They vowed to never again let their trust be so easily given, and they took concrete steps to ensure that the girls would always have someone to turn to for support and guidance. And so, Jacarandi moved forward. The pain of betrayal had not disappeared, but the community was healing. The young girls, who had once been afraid to speak, now had the courage to stand up for themselves. They knew that their voices mattered, that they were not alone. Together, they had faced the darkness and had come out stronger, ready to shape their own futures. Under the vast African sky, the village of Jacarandi had found its way back to the light. The scars of the past would always remain, but the lessons learned would continue to guide the next generation, teaching them that no one, no matter how charming or trusted, could ever again take away their dreams. The end. The moral of the story is the importance of vigilance, courage, and community unity in confronting betrayal and injustice. It highlights that trust must be earned and verified, the strength of speaking out, and that community support is key. Comment below on your thoughts about our modern-day school teachers. Do not forget to press that like and subscribe button, as it helps with our channel to grow and be able to reach more viewers with more entertaining and informative stories. Like and share this video. Thank you for your support. Until next time.